Good morning. Welcome to Forums That Matter, a community service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. And I'm Ken Freeze. I'm a member of the Forum Committee and coordinator of today's discussion, which is both in Fellowship Hall and remote. Our topic today is fair districting and how to stop gerrymandering. In 2015 and again in 2018, voters approved amendments to the state constitution that created a redistricting commission and drew legislative districts for the Ohio General Assembly as well as the Ohio representatives to Congress. The redistricting committee met after the 2020 census, but each proposed map was determined unconstitutional by the Ohio Supreme Court. And one of those maps was used in the 2020 election. Okay. After the election, the Ohio Redistricting Committee adopted a sixth map. Those maps show a disproportionate non-representation of Ohio voters. Ohio citizens have been disenfranchised. On the positive, however, there is a battle that continues with a new state ballot and citizens, not politicians, for a redistricting commission of citizens, not politicians. We'll have a Q&A session from 9:30 to about 10. Marlene and Jan will pass the mics to our in-person audience. We ask their virtual audience, click on the Q&A box at home. Also, our virtual viewers can turn on and off captioning at their will. Please be sure that your phones here in the hall are turned off or in airplane mode. This program is recorded and will be available in a few days at the website uucleveland.org. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers. Ohio Senate Minority Leader Nickie J. Antonio is honored to be serving her second term in the Ohio Senate after serving 8 years in the House. Senator Antonio has also served as Lakewood City Council member, Executive Director of the Cleveland-based Women's Outpatient Drug and Alcohol Treatment, Adjunct Professor at Cleveland State, and is a teacher for children with special needs. Antonio's 2023 ascension to Senate Minority Leader is the pinnacle in her numerous notable firsts. As the first member of the LGBTQ community in the Ohio General Assembly. The Assembly has been in existence for 208 years, and this was the first. And she's elected as the lesbian member of the LGBTQ community. Our second guest is Annette Sutherland. She's chaired the Cleveland chapter of the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland since 2021. She has worked on 3 statewide ballot initiatives and is named one of the citizens, not politicians. She was elected to the Shaker Heights Board of Education and has served 3 terms from 2010 to 2021. She's an attorney and a proud alumna of the Shaker Public Schools. So please welcome our guest.
Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us on this cold morning. Senator Antonio and I are just meeting for the first time and have not rehearsed this. So we're going to do our best to explain the situation with the slides that we have.
And I'll just say, not only have we not rehearsed this, I want to be real clear up front, even as we've chatted this morning, we're going to be sharing the slides that have been produced by the League of Women Voters. My office added a little bit of information, and we've very quickly on a Zoom call went over that. But other than that, we haven't, as she said, as Annette said, we haven't rehearsed. And we also, this is not any kind of a debate. While we haven't rehearsed, we are in total agreement on where we need to go forward. And I wanted to make sure everybody understood that up front. As we talk about this, I'll explain how both of us will explain how we got to where we are now and then where we're going. So with that, and I want to tell everyone both in the room and virtually, it's interesting how we're also learning to cohabitate with each other when we're in person and virtual. We're used to doing this in the legislature because all of our committees, and I fought very hard for this when I was in the House, that all of our committees are streamed now. That wasn't always the case. In fact, it's only been a few years that every single committee is streamed live and then archived, so that people can get that information in the future. I'm not sure why we're in the dark now, but okay. So we'll bring some light to the darkness for sure. So with that, why don't we start?
Okay, this just has some contact information for each of us. And we can provide that again at the end. And I want to emphasize that although we are both here in support of this new initiative, I am from a nonpartisan coalition. Senator Antonio is very much involved in the Democratic Party in the state, and the League of Women Voters is nonpartisan. And in fact, Citizens Not Politicians supports an amendment.
Put it in play mode so it does the whole screen.
You know, yeah,
Well, that will mess up with our directors.
Okay, never mind.
Sorry.
can't do that, huh?
Yeah, so
All right.
all right, so the coalition that's leading the campaign for Citizens Not Politicians, which is PAC, the coalition leading the campaign has the League of Women Voters and Common Cause of Ohio very involved.
And what I'll say is she's going to the next slide, so we can get, and we're gonna go through some of this very quickly, because I think many of you in the audience understand some of this very, very well. As far as, right, I'm the Democratic leader of the caucus in the Senate, the Democratic caucus in the Senate. What I can tell you is that my colleagues in both the House and the Senate will be very active, working in collaboration and cooperation with the coalition of folks as we go forward. This is very much at the top of the list of priorities for Democrats in the state of Ohio to get to fair districting. So we got that part of it out of the way as well.
And before we start talking about what gerrymandering is, I think we need a couple ABCs on redistricting. So every 10 years, the United States does a census, and that tells you where there have been movements in population, and the districts have to be redrawn in order that each of the districts has relatively equal population involved. And in Ohio, that means 3 maps, one for federal, congressional, and Senate district. Sorry, not Senate, congressional, and one for the Ohio House of Representatives, and one for the Ohio Senate, which is essentially the House of Representatives reconfigured into 3 representative districts together to make one state Senate district.
What? One state Senate.
3 House districts go into one state
Oh,
Senate,
yeah.
Senate
sorry.
seat.
Right, so 99 House members, 33 Senate districts, then 3 nested into each Senate district. Get you there. Get the math there.
So gerrymandering is a manipulation of drawing the district lines so that you can separate groups that tend to vote together or compact them, super compact them, in order to predict the political leaning of the district.
the slang terms are cracking and packing. I'm going to talk about what's so bad about gerrymandering. It gives you the situation we have right now. Where in a state where just a little over 50%, I think it's like 54, 56% of the population tends to vote Republican, with a companion leftover amount, about somewhere between 43 and 46% of the population voting Democrat. That is, so you would expect to see those kinds of proportions with all of the representation that you see. That is absolutely not the case. That's what's so bad about gerrymandering, is that it leads to a disproportionate representation where, frankly, the people running for office, the politicians, pick the people they want to represent, rather than our democratic values, which say that the people should pick their representatives.
Right, so we actually have a slide about that coming up, but someone else started the PowerPoint for us. So again, this is some of the problems with gerrymandering. Just as the senator said, it means that you can, the politicians who are there can say, okay, I want to run again. I want to make sure the people who are likely to vote for me end up in my district. I'm going to draw the district around my residents. I'm going to make sure that so-and-so who I know gets continued to be successful in his or her elections. And it ends up with a situation where you have uncompetitive districts and the representation is chosen in the primary rather than in the general election, because there's because you already know which way the district is leaning. So stop us if we're going too fast with this part.
I don't think we can go fast enough to get to the main part.
So again, we had statewide elections in 2015 and 2018 where more than 70% of Ohio voters said, stop gerrymandering. The anti-gerrymandering amendments won in all 88 Ohio counties in 2015 and 2018. So we ended up with a commission of seven elected officers who were drawing districts based on the 2020 election. And I'm sorry, 2020 census. And you may recall that census was delayed because of arguments over what questions were going to be asked about citizenship, as well as the pandemic. So then,
as well as the administration that was in power at the time, which worked actively to delay the census. Go ahead.
yeah, so in 2021, with new census data, the new commission went through its process, and what we ended up with was 5 commission members out of 7 being from the same political party. So the redistricting process that had been envisioned by these statewide amendments got subverted by the political process.
One of the main caveats in that process was that if the commission, and this sounded like a good idea when we all voted for it, if they couldn't agree, we would end up with a 4-year map, and we come back and instead of a 10-year map, so that we weren't locked into another 10 years of gerrymander. We would come back in 4 years and try again. Unfortunately, talk about subverting the process. That process was not only subverted in that basically the members of the commission said, well, can't agree, we'll just have a 4-year map. Oh, wow. I will tell you that the 4-year map was actually used by some of the leadership in the majority caucus to threaten their members. You don't agree? You don't agree with this vote that we're taking for anything, fill in the blank. Next time around, we'll draw you, I know exactly what your address is, we'll draw you out of your district, and we'll just run someone else. So not only was something that was supposed to get people to agree on things subverted, but it was actually used in a way that I think no one expected, an extreme unintended consequence.
Yeah, so there was litigation, and another problem with the amendments that had been set up by the 2015 and 2018 ballot issues was that the Supreme Court had jurisdiction to declare a map unconstitutional, but it didn't really have a remedy to enforce it.
That was a big problem. And basically, the majority member said, well, we don't have to listen to them. We are co-equal branches, therefore they can't tell us what to do. And in our state, in other states, the Supreme Court has the jurisdiction to draw the map. If the commission doesn't draw the map, they will, and they'll just impose the map on the commission. We did not have that ability. So that led us to the stalemate, basically, that happened.
All right, so this is more illustration of the numbers and the way the numbers got influenced or manipulated by the political process. So you can see that despite almost an equal representation of people registered with either party or participating in the primaries of either party, you ended up with, well, I'm having trouble reading this, sorry. Page 4.
Page 4.
Slide 14.
Wow, I'm having trouble. Okay, so is there any way we can see this bigger? I mean, we can't read this.
We ended up with
A light might help.
Anything.
Anything would help.
Live show.
okay, you know what, I can read it well enough. I just realized.
Well, thank you. Light,
The Republic, after the 2021 elections, we ended up with 79% of the Senate being from the Republican Party. And 68% of the House of Representatives being from the Republican Party. And again, it should be closer to 50-50. And then there is a new map that
so I'll talk about
Yeah.
that. So what happened then? So for those of you who are following the process that happened this time around, first of all, it was embarrassing, frankly, as a member of the commission, because the Republicans refused, and I'm sorry, it ended up being partisan. I can't talk about this without saying that. The Republican majority and the majority members on the commission refused to pick a co-chair. So we couldn't even get started. You can't get started you have to have co-chairs. So they refused to pick a co-chair because there is something else going on in the state of Ohio right now. There's a proxy war between the Senate president and the Speaker of the House, because next election cycle, they are both going to be in the House and they're both going to be vying for the same position. They each want to be Speaker of the House. And so all this time before, we're fighting a proxy war. So they wouldn't agree, and it was a big mess. We finally got a co-chair. We finally got agreements on that. One of the first things I was told as a member of the commission was, right now you have 7 members out of 33 in the Senate. We know how to take you down to 6. I want to let that sink in for a minute. And we're absolutely ready to do that. And in the House, they said the same thing to the leadership there. We know how to take you down. We can draw the map so that we can draw out at least 5 more of your districts and take you down to an even smaller minority. Now, there are some folks who think we should have just sat there and said, well, the process is broken, so we're not going to participate. I wasn't elected to do that. I was elected to go and represent the people that I serve and the 11.7 million people in the state of Ohio that get affected by my vote and what I do, my work. And so because I and my colleagues took this very seriously, we did absolutely play the hand we were dealt. And the hand that we were dealt said, go in there and negotiate with those folks, get what you can. And I'm telling you right now, we should never do it this way, but that was the hand we were dealt. And so as a result of the compromise maps right now, if I can read these numbers, put us at a point where at the floor, so the lowest amount we could get is we can get to 9 or 10 out of the 23 this election cycle. In the House, they can get to 38 out of 99 in this election cycle, perhaps. I mean, there's still, there are elections, you have to do this. The opportunity is there for the way the districts are drawn, they're more competitive. And then the next cycle, we can even pick up more. That's as we did this right now. Knowing that, the other thing I'm going to say is that what we also were aware of, because we had conversations with coalition members, with all kinds of advocacy groups, and one of the things we knew was that on the horizon was the Citizens Not Politicians ballot initiative. And if, and it's a big if, it goes through in 2020, we could be redrawing maps as early as 2025. And because of the way the ballot initiative is written, they would draw the maps and then they would be instituted in 2026. Nothing we did right now prevents that from happening. But I believe what we did was create a net, if you will, a safety net, in the case that something goes wrong with that and we have to go back to the drawing board or whatever it is. We still have the opportunity to gradually move forward. It's like build the plane as you're flying it, right? So we're doing that. We're building the plane, we're flying it at the same time.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the Republicans have controlled gerrymandering in Ohio since 1991. So they've had quite a lot of time to figure out how to do it. And in addition, there's software that's increasingly sophisticated that helps them draw the districts that way. And one of their explanations when they drew the maps in 2021 and Ohioans objected was, oh, this is the only way we can do it because Ohio has turned red. But there was a national news story that a high school class doing a gerrymandering exercise in a New Jersey high school drew a map for Ohio that was that favored Democrats, that ended up with a Democratic majority. So, yeah, what do they say? The statistics lie.
Yeah, right. It is definitely possible.
All right, and this just illustrates again the imbalance of representation versus how voters are thinking. That we've had a couple of statewide elections where clearly the majority of Ohioans are voting against what a minority of legislators was trying to accomplish. So let's talk about the amendment. How do we fix this? We are proposing an amendment to the Ohio Constitution that would replace the current articles that govern how districts are drawn. And it would create, first of all, title slides I'm going to skip through. First of all, a commission that's 15 members that is doesn't include any elected politicians or lobbyists. It has a very complicated, actually, system for vetting candidates so that you can't get to be on the commission if you have been working as a lobbyist, if you've held political office for a certain number of years, if you're a family member of a politician, that sort of thing. And it also sets forth rules for how the districts are drawn and that they should be representational and comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, etc.
And so what you'll hear from the opposition, and clearly what we heard all the way through the discussions from our colleagues across the aisle, is that it's absolutely impossible to find anybody who's not political, who doesn't have political leanings. That was the first thing I said. So these other states that have done this, they're, oh, well, it's, not real. So first of all, so those are going to be some of the pushback, is that it's going to be difficult to find truly independent thinkers, people who are independent. It just can't be done. Well, if you've had a rigged system that's worked for you so well, of course, you're going to say it's impossible to do it any other way. But all we have to do is look to our friends to the north to see that it is absolutely possible to do. We'll take questions when we're done.
Okay, so, the basic principles behind the proposed amendment are that they need to be fair maps. They can't favor a particular party. They can't take an incumbent or candidate address into account, and preserve communities of interest. Communities of interest are things like municipalities, school districts, groups of suburbs that tend to share facilities or economies.
And I'll say, having gone through this process and having sat with map drawers, both our own and when we tried to get both map drawers in the room, it is not an easy, while the software is there to be able to plug in the numbers, to follow the rules that are set up and also have districts that make sense is not an easy, that's the part of it that's not going to be an easy task it's doable. It's just not easy. And so I don't want anybody to think that you can just push a button and have it magically happen. There are communities of association that the numbers and the computers aren't going to know, and will still, you can be across the street from your neighbor in one district and you on the other across the street. They'll try as much as possible, to follow all those, keeping groups together, but it is not an easy process. And probably the key to what was just said is that it doesn't take into account where the current legislators or elected officials live. And that's the key. That's the key, because it's going to mean either people who want to continue may have to move, or they may not be eligible to be the representative or the senator or the Congress. Congress is a little different. They can be elected anyway, but going forward, it's really going to make a difference.
Okay, so a key component of the Citizens Not Politicians amendment is to have a lot of public hearings and public disclosure of the reasoning behind any particular map, and an opportunity for true public comment. You may recall that after the 2020 census and the 2021 process, they did hold public hearings across Ohio, but people of the commission most of them did not attend the public hearings. We're not there to listen to public comment. They sent staff members. And I participated in a couple of those hearings, and it was very, very frustrating.
And in the last process that we just went through, public hearings were held. One was held in a park, in a state park. Frankly, very difficult to get to. They were done for the sake of checking off a box, not for the and bless the hearts of the people that showed up, because people did come. They carpooled, they came, they testified. And in that case, I will say it was a captive audience, because we were out kind of in the middle of nowhere. But playing a game with public comment is not the intention of any of the people who wrote these guidelines up to begin with. It's certainly not, again, what the people of the state of Ohio voted on. And so public comment and having that transparency is incredibly important to the whole process.
Okay, and then there are clear rules set forth in the proposed amendment for how to challenge a set of maps that has been presented. So any Ohio elector can file a challenge. They go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court then has a different process set up by the amendment to appoint what they call special masters, who are people with some kind of expertise in all this. And there's actually a few people around with this kind of expertise. And if necessary, and then those special masters review the new proposed maps and find out how compliant or non-compliant they are. And in some circumstances, they themselves can change the maps. They can amend the maps to make them fair. And I wanted to point out that there is also a provision in the proposed amendment for compensation. for special masters and for some of the professionals involved. It would be a per diem plus expenses, and it is, because this could be extremely time consuming for any of the professionals involved. Okay.
Are you going to talk about the project? I think being at the time.
Yeah, we need to
get
get
to
to
talk to the ballot initiative.
Okay, I wanted to get to this slide to explain how people apply to get on the commission. You mentioned earlier that some legislators are arguing that it's impossible to find impartial people who would serve, but the process starts with 4 retired judges, 2 from either party, and very open application process, and those people get screened, and then there's selection and some random selection, all of which is designed to end up with a bipartisan panel that is prepared to be much more impartial than the people drawing the districts have been in the past.
Because they don't have the self-interest. Absolutely, step one, the thing that's taken out of this is none of the people drawing the maps are going to be drawing a district for themselves to then serve in. And I think that's really, when all is said and done, the key and the critical part to this.
Because we all know that power corrupts.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely.
And people get a little too cozy sometimes in positions. So one last slide to share here.
And while she's looking at that, I'll just say, I've talked a lot about partisan things. When it comes to that part of things, both parties are guilty. There was an opportunity years and years ago, and some of you may remember this, when we could have had a much more fair system where some of the politicians would have been taken out of the process then, and the Democrats did not want to go for it. So I'll just say, self-interest, protecting seats, protecting the ability to be the person is an equal opportunity bias that runs in both parties, absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate your candor. So I think we're at the end of our slides and our somewhat prepared remarks here, and we're ready for questions.
I guess before we do that, just real quickly, the ballot initiative signatures are being collected right now. I'm sure there's probably some of you in this room, and I see your t-shirts that are doing that. And so the hope is to have it on the ballot for 2024. And then, as I said, if it passes, then we would see 2025 as the year where the work would be done, and the maps would go in a perfect world with everything working right. The maps would go into effect in 2026. We'd finish out the 2020s, and then we'd start the new process all over again in 2030 with a new census, and then what we look at is the 10-year map going forward. So I just wanted to close the circle on that.
Thank you. And also we should explain that we've been through several petition gathering phases for this amendment, but we are now at the final phase of qualifying to be on the Ohio ballot in November of 2024. And there are people here with petitions if you are willing to sign.
Okay.
Well, thank you to both of our speakers, and we're going to be transitioning to Q&A. And Marlene and Jen will be passing the mics. Let them decide who's going to speak.
So right now you have that. Yeah.
I thank you for your presentation. Could you, maybe everyone understands this, but maybe not. Could you explain the difference of how gerrymandering contributes to extremism within the party that's controlling the gerrymandering?
Sure, I could start. So basically what happens is and we see the situation right now, and it happens on both sides of the aisle, but if you have a district that's, I don't know, 79% one party, then the only place that there's any decision going on is when you have if there's a primary. And when there's a primary, the parties that are running against each other are trying to convince that small group of primary voters, and it's always a smaller group, who is the more extreme on the continuum for that party. So who is the furthest to the right or who is the furthest to the left? And then that person that wins that primary then goes into the general election. And if it's so gerrymandered already, it's guaranteed that the person that wins the primary is going to win the general election. And we have been seeing more and more extreme members of the parties come then to the legislature, in my experience, come to the legislature, where we have people now coming who speak about national issues, but they're not as well versed on their local community issues, because their whole lens that they looked at running for office was on national talking points. And so those hot button culture wars issues are the things that they ran on, and that then they come to the legislature bringing with them.
Part of the problem is the historically low turnout for any primary election. So, for example, in Cuyahoga County, 10% of voters participated in the August 2022 primary. May 2022, 21% across Ohio, 18% in Cuyahoga County. So this is a very small proportion of voters making a decision that affects everybody.
It's funny, I feel like getting petition signatures now is a hobby of mine, because I did the first round of signatures for this. I did the signatures for the abortion initiative, and really are happy. But just a few things I wanted to say. First, if you are interested in this topic, there's an excellent book, and I apologize if I have anyone by the title of it, but the actual name is called Wrap Up, and it talks about, it goes into this in extreme detail. I grew up in Pennsylvania. It talks about how my mother grew up in. We are certainly not alone, and how this was very much a Republican initiative, and it was really political brilliance. If you look at it, it was very effective, and so now we have to work at finding effectiveness. One of the things that I have heard in response is, as you mentioned, I believe, the Federal Voting Rights Act, and so the commentary back is, well, if we get rid of this, then we will not have districts that are primarily African-American districts, so we won't have districts where we have majority representation in that sense. If you could speak to that. And then I did have a question, is there a certain age that people have to be to actually get petitions? You have to be 18 of voting age, or can teenagers actually be engaged in getting the petition signed once they come out? Thank you.
To be a petition circulator, you do have to be a registered voter and 18 years old.
Can I just
The minority representation?
Well, and also I want to go back to something you said at the beginning, the series of petitions and the series of initiatives. That is very much a result of gerrymandered districts. The fact that we had emboldened politicians who believed that they could just change the date, change the percentage of how Ohioans make decisions for themselves, when the elected officials are operating way outside of their agreement level, right? So the majority of Ohioans said, we don't agree with you. Thank goodness we have ballot initiative process to be able to disagree, right? And so what happened then was the politicians, the majority Republicans said, okay, well, I know what we'll do. No one votes in August. No one's paying attention to what we're really doing anyway. We can just pull the wool over their eyes in August. And change everything, change the rules that will benefit us and then move forward. Didn't work once, it didn't work twice. Thank you to you and everyone else who continues to bring these ballot initiatives forward. But what it says, people are saying, oh, are we getting like California or something? Why do we have so many ballot initiatives? We have so many ballot initiatives because the legislature is tone deaf to the real will of the people. That's why this is happening. And if we don't take it back and level things out, we'll just see this continue.
Next question.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the talk. Are there actually people who, when asked in a poll, say, I'm against fair districting, because they have nothing to do with the I don't know, they go out into the hinterlands that tend to vote red at this point in time, and they don't want fair district.
Well, I think that the fact that it won, the anti-gerrymandering amendment won in all 88 counties.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by state percentages of over 70% in 2015 and 2018. I think that means that people are against gerrymandering. I also think that I did talk to one Republican puppeteer, let's say, someone who's not a public face, who controls things from behind the scenes. And he said, oh, I don't want fair districts.
But that was an operative.
And I was out in 2018 with petitions for that amendment, and one person, when he realized what I was doing, declined to sign. But most people will support the idea.
I think we all know that no proposal or law can be perfect in every way, except the law of unintended consequences. And its corollary, what could possibly go wrong? So I have a two-part question. Can you foresee at this point in time, assume that the proposal ends up passing, the amendment passes. Can you foresee at this point in time anything that could have been better addressed? And as you know, any problems that may arise. And the second part of that is, as these problems arise, which they surely will the commission itself have any powers to deal with those problems and correct them?
Well, I think as far as the commission goes, they will have a real specific job, and the job will be to draw the maps every 10 years. For ancillary, what could go wrong, and of course some things will, or maybe it'll take 10 years for the powers that be to figure out how to manipulate the process again or whatever. I think, both in the courts, I think we'll see things in the courts. As long as the people of Ohio spoke so strongly in both of those ballot initiatives up to now, but one of the things they said with a resounding, we want the ability to be able to override the legislature when they get out of line. And I think as long as we have that, and that's why the majority knew that was a dangerous thing that they wanted to fix. I anticipate they'll try to come back again and change the rules down the road. So, but nothing is perfect. But I think as long as we have the opportunity for citizens to do the override, I think we're in a good space. And things did not go exactly how people expected in Michigan, in Virginia, in some of the other states where they have an independent redistricting commission, but they've become more balanced. And the biggest thing is it's forced people to come back to the center to have a conversation. That will make things better for us in Ohio.
Hi, I have 3 questions from the virtual audience. And so the first one, I think might be short answer. Where can participants be signed if we're not there in person today?
Go to fairdistrictohio.org, and there is a lot of information about where to find petitions to sign.
So, this next one, I'm sure there's a lot of answers for this one, but, here's, maybe we can do a brief answer here. What can we do to help?
We
Go to Bear District.
Ohio, and find out who is coordinating petitions for your area. They are always looking for more circulators. You do have to go through training to be a circulator. An hour online is very not time consuming, but we're concerned that the Secretary of State and other people who are not necessarily welcoming this amendment will be looking for technical reasons to disqualify petitions. So we're being very careful in how we train our circulators.
Here's the last one. Great presentation. Can you talk a little more about how the Supreme Court of Ohio became so ineffective in this area, and how the heck we will ever move forward without Maureen O'Connor?
Well, first, Maureen O'Connor was very involved in helping to design the Citizens Not Politicians Amendment. She and other experts spent many months working on the details to try to figure out how to avoid those unintended consequences and devise a system that was workable and politician proof. As for the league opposes putting judicial candidate party affiliation on the ballot. And we believe very strongly that judges should be impartial and above the law, not above the law, but above partisanship. And adhere strictly to rules of ethics. And I'm going to comment on the Supreme Court more than that.
And I will. You know, because of the fact that the last cycle, this coming cycle, there's going to be political affiliation on the ballot, creates some problems in terms of just people thinking about those candidates as political affiliates and not who's the best person for this job, especially in a judicial role, especially at the Supreme Court level. I think Maureen O'Connor showed us, she showed what the bar should be. She made decisions above party affiliation. She made decisions based on the canon of the law. And that's what we would hope that we would hold all of our Supreme Court justices to. Unfortunately, we're going to be challenged by that. I agree. We should take those affiliations off of, they should not be there for judges. There's a movement afoot to try to do it on the local level, only when they think it may be beneficial. It's another one of those games we shouldn't play. But I also think that we should be very wary and pay very much attention, very close attention to any time that they want to change the rules, because there's a national movement afoot to say that legislative bodies are above the decisions made by courts, by the Supreme Court. So we have to be careful of that. It's happening in other countries. We have to make sure that they are equal bodies, and we need to keep it at that level.
My question pertains to the details of what the criteria are going to be for the citizens who end up on this panel. And the reason I'm asking is that, well, it's sad that the politicians think that everybody in this country is more interested in gaming the system like they are, rather than people who truly believe in democracy and fairness in voting. It's a polarized society we have, and there are citizens who I believe would try to do that too, if they get onto the panel, even if they're not personally invested in whether, which district the politician's address is in. So my question is there anything in the selection process that would evaluate whether the citizens who would be appointed to the panel actually believe in fairness.
Well, before, and I'm gonna let Annette answer the detail part of that question to what the criteria is that's mapped out. I do want to challenge, the idea that all politicians do not believe in democracy and that all politicians.
I overstated.
That's okay. I'm listening really well. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's all those years as a teacher. I listen really well. I heard that. And I just want to push back on that a little bit. And I also want to say that just like not every person in political office, I'm a policymaker first. Somewhere in there, I guess I end up being a politician as well, but, and I don't think it should be a dirty word, but I think that, just like there are those of us in political office and elected office who believe in democracy, who believe in the will of the people and upholding that, I also believe that there are citizens, there's going to be a mix. There are people in elected office who can set aside their own personal promotions and advantage. I'd like to think I'm one of those people. Just like that's possible, I think we're going to find a range and a mix and a continuum of citizens. As best as they can screen and go through, are one or two people who have an agenda going to get through? Probably. But I think that's the benefit of having a large group, large, if you will, a balanced group. And I don't.
Yeah, the specific criteria are that any applicant has to disclose several things. Contributions made to any candidate for elective office or political parties or political action committees. Their history of partisan affiliations, including primary ballots voted, non-monetary contributions to political campaigns, family members who would be ineligible, personal or professional relationships with someone else who would be ineligible, and financial information required by law. And they're automatically ineligible to serve if they're a current elected or appointed official. And this includes federal, state, or local office. Persons who have served in any of these offices during the current year or preceding 6 years, and immediate family members. Persons who have been a candidate in the current year or preceding 6 years and their family members. People who have been a consultant or contractor to a political party or a political action committee. Someone who served as a staff member, paid consultant, or contractor for any elected official. People who have been registered lobbyists or legislative
Is that list
agents.
posted somewhere?
It's accessible on the Citizen Petitions website and the fairdistrictsohio.org. You'd be digging down to see the language of the actual amendment that's being proposed. And it's also at the back of all the petitions that are here. Part of the petition packet that circulators are given. So you can read all those details.
I think we may have. Thank you.
Well, so
I tend to follow the judge for yourself system. Picking candidates. I don't really know the candidates that well, and I put undue reliance on the reporters who put out the systems their favorite candidates. But when we get better to pick the candidates, I wonder if a similar system would work for picking political candidates.
Well, as long I agree. I use that as well. Thank you. As long as we have a party system, the parties right now screen and pick candidates in the forms of endorsements. Sometimes that's a good measure, sometimes not. I will tell you from my own personal experience, There have been times when I've been endorsed by the party. And there have been times when I haven't. And I've still won. But so it's a little bit different with judges, I think, because they are not necessarily in the political eye, frankly, unless you had to go, if you're not an attorney or working in the system, unless you've crossed the line with the law, you will not have access to or cross paths with the judge. And so the judge for yourself screening process really helps those of us who may not have contact with judges just get a sense of how they perform their jobs. Right now, the screening process for elected officials is the day-to-day work that they do, and your responsibility to pay attention to what in the world are the people who represent you doing. How are they voting?
We get one more question.
Got one more question, please.
Mine's a bigger question. It's to keep the drum for the League of Women Voters. We found out this time from League, Geauga, the famous red area, who voted very fairly. And I tried, and it's hard for me to be nonpartisan, so I switched. I mean, my favorite button is destroy the patriarchy. So, League.
I'm with
What
you.
happened this summer, we saw with the League, if we're interpreting what we're hearing correctly, is the historical nonpartisanship of the League massively appeals to Ohioans who like to think of themselves as centrist. So if you are interested in door to door, for example, if I go with my individual button or my move on button or my destroy the patriarchy button, it's not received the same as if you are League of Women Voters. It's shocking. And another plug for the League, the websites have tons of good information. So when you're doing your on the internet, I would say don't just automatically Google, go ahead, automatically Google an idea that you're trying to research. But then think of the League as a backup site. Dependent. So
Thank
hats
you.
off to
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's awesome. I'll give a plug. If you want to know what your representatives at least in the Ohio General Assembly are doing, go to the Ohio channel and you can put in their name, see whether they're speaking on issues on the floor. You can see what committees they serve on. You can watch them in action in committees. I mean, there is a lot of opportunity to really get information about what folks are doing who represent us. Thank you.
If I could just do one more plug for the League, I want to let people know that February 13th, we're working with the city to do a State of the City presentation in the evening, featuring our mayor and some members of his staff. And we also are doing a joint forum with the Shaker Schools on February 15th that will talk about the facility planning process and other current issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our guests and our audience for being here. Just few closing comments, administrative really. The next forum will be on March 4th,
They don't hear you in the mic.
on March 4th. The next forum. The topic is guns, violence, public safety, and what's happening.
Oh, now you're working.
We will have Jared Shuck, who is the Cleveland Police Commander, one of them, and Rachel Lovell, Director of Criminal Research Center. They will be our speakers. If you would like our weekly reminder of forms and other information about UUCC, you have a table back there. You can sign the email and you will be on we have about 600 people on the list, by the way. You're welcome to attend our service upstairs at 10:15, or you can go on YouTube because it's virtually broadcast. The theme today is prisons we choose to live inside. And Reverend Dr. Randy Partain will be the speaker. To see what else is happening, as I said, please go to uucleveland.org for additional information. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.